This is a quick video for primarily the people who are in my NCW class at my sewing room in Calgary, but I thought it would be a useful video for other people as well. It's just about finishing off the final stages. You can get the pattern from Emmaline bags. What I'll be showing you in this particular video is how to, once you've constructed the card slots, the zipper pocket and the outside of the purse, how to put those 3 layers together to create this wallet. First off, we're going to attach the card slots to the wallet. What you're going to do is you're going to centre, this is hard to tell on mine because I have the same lining colour as card slots. Then, once we've got it centred, and the flap is a good guide for this, you're going to fold the sides in. My sides are easy to fold in because I have extra Peltex in my wallet. So for those who weren't in my class, and this isn't on the pattern, I actually cut a square that's the same size as the middle of the paper pattern of the main body, minus the semicircles, and then I cut it a ½ inch shorter. So this paper piece is the one that I'm talking about. Your square of extra Peltex will be 8 inches wide because that's the distance between this line here and this line here, and then the depth will be 8.5 because it's actually 9 inches, but we need to just take a little bit out for the seam allowances. So what I did originally was I cut that piece out and then I fused it to the exterior, back of the exterior piece that we cut out that was this oval shape, using this pattern with the flap folded back at the semicircle just for placement so I could figure out where that needed to go. And that also meant that I didn't need to put the square of fusible stabiliser on either for the fastener. Anyway, back to where we were. You've got it lining side up, pockets are centred in the middle, just check spacing at top and the bottom, and you're going to fold the sides in. You can clip them here if you want to as well with the window clips. Make sure you've got a heavy needle in your machine. Mine's a 100 size jean needle. And then we're going to sew down these sides, and we're going to do that with a 1/4 inch seam allowance and a slightly longer than usual stitch. Go slow when you're doing these longer stitches because these are effectively top stitches, so whatever you've got in your bobbin will show on here, so make sure that you have matching threads. I've got a creamy off-white on both of mine. We're going to back stitch at the beginning and the end of these stitches as well, just to reinforce it. Make sure that you are getting that card slot in there as you stitch. You want to be over the basting stitch that you already have there as well. So if that means that you have to sew a little bit more than a 1/4 inch, then you can do that. So this is being wrapped really nice and tight over those card slots. And then back stitch. So I've sewed mine up to that seam that we had where we did the top stitching all the way around the top of the bag when we first put it together, and so now I'm just going to repeat that but with the other side. Then we're just going to trim those little straggly bits. Next is to centre the zipper pocket. So what we want to make sure is that the zipper is at the top, but when it's closed it wants to be on the left hand side. We're going to just be careful how we centre this. You might want to just measure it from top and bottom just to make sure it's nice and even, because this stitching will also create the base of the purse. So what I can do is I can just fold that in half and line that fold with the centre fold of our card slots. Then unfold it again. I'm just going to use a water erasable marker. So this whole wallet area here is 8 inches, so if we measure 4 inches from the very bottom of the purse, it should match up with our fold line from earlier. So I've just marked that, and then you also want to mark a ½ inch either side of that line. Make sure that you mark it enough so that you can see it. Don't move this at this point, but you've got your lines there. You're now going to sew along those 2 outside lines, and then you're going to join them together so they're like a little box. Keep your stitches on quite long, keep the needle and that you have in the machine already. So I'm just going to push that under there. You can pin this if you want to as well. So we're going to sew along the sides, and then we're going to sew very close to this folded edge here about 1/8 of an inch away from the flaps. And again, this bobbing thread will show on the bottom of your purse, so make sure you have a colour in there that you want to use. And we're going to be back stitching this to start and stop as well, or knotting your threads if you have that function on your machine. Alright, so I'm just going to trim the threads on this now as well. The start and finish should be in the same spot. So now on the back, you might not be able to quite tell because I've got quite a blending thread in there, but we have like a little box that shows all the way through, and we've sewn along those lines there, and at this point I'm just going to spritz it with some water just to get rid of those blue lines. And the next thing to do is to mark on the flaps, because we're going to figure out where we need to fold them to finally finish this off, because all of our pieces are together now, we just need to construct it into the right shape. So we're going to get a ruler, we're going to put a dot at 3.5 or 3.5 inches from the very corner of these flaps. So this is 3.5 inches here. That's now lined up with that, where that curve finishes. And I'm swinging my ruler around, making sure that it pivots on that point until I find the edge of this semicircle here. I'm just going to make a little mark where that is, and then repeat for the other 3 sides. There's a flap. I'm going to pivot this one on the 0 spot, and then we're going to pivot until our 3.5 mark lines up with the side, which it does there. And once we've got those marks on the other flap as well, what you can do is join that dot up with the seam line that's closest, that you just sewed recently, the one that's in the base. We're going to just use the ruler again and a water erasable pen. And we're going to join that corner of your stitching with the dot that you just made. And the same for the other one. Make sure you can see those lines. So this is what mine looks like. These were my dots. I've joined them up to the stitching here, and then this line of stitching lines up with this dot I made. So I'm just going to repeat that again now, but for the other side. You've now got 2 options. You're either going to fold these pieces of the zipper pocket up and match them in, or you're going to do this either way, and pinch the sides so those lines are there so that you know where to grab those pieces of your wallet, and then you're going to stitch down them close to the edge, or you can use rivets and just hold them in place if you think your machine might struggle with the thickness. I'm actually going to rivet mine because my machine's been a little bit on the blink lately, but I'm still going to use clips. If you choose to sew yours, what you can do is just sort of sew a little section of it. So you could just do about 1 inch worth of stitching, so you're not sewing all the way down, because that would be really tricky once you get to close to here. As long as you keep the length the same for all 4 parts of these that you're going to be stitching, it'll then act in a similar way to a rivet, because the rivet's only going to hold it in one area. Okay, so we know generally how this is going to look now. I'm just going to mark on where I'm going to put my rivets, pierce them, put them through, hammer them down, and then I'll come back and I'll show you what that looks like finished. Alright, so I put my rivets in. They're reasonably evenly spaced. So when I say that, I'm talking about the distance from the edge of the fold, as well as the height position as well, so how far down I put them in. So that's one side, and that's the other. Just make sure that you're always getting all of those layers in there, so that when it folds up, you've got a nice finished necessary clutch wallet.